For today's lesson is 12.2. We're going to be working with rational functions again. Today we are going to sketch a graph of a rational function using vertical and horizontal asymptotes. So this is not that different from what we did earlier this week. Okay, so our first thing we need to do is talk about our vocab. So the first thing we want to do is talk about a rational function. This is a function that has a variable or our x in the denominator. And the denominator, remember, is the bottom of a fraction. Okay, so some examples of this might be 1 over x, 1 over x squared, or 1 over x squared plus 2x. Okay, lots of different examples of this. An excluded value or excluded values are values that x can't be. Okay, so can't is the key word here. It prevents us from dividing by 0. So if you guys remember from in the past, we can't have 1 over 0. If 0 is in the bottom of a fraction, it doesn't work. So because of this, we have x does not equal whatever value. Okay, and we're going to talk about that. So this is how we write an excluded value. We put x cannot equal, which is just an equal sign with a line through it. And then we put whatever number. Okay. A rational function is a function that can't have the value 0 in the denominator. So we have to set the denominator equal to 0 and solve so that we can find what it can't be, or what the excluded values are. Okay, so that might not make a whole bunch of sense, but let's go ahead and jump into here. Okay, we are going to identify the excluded values for each rational function. So we have our denominator, and we're going to set it equal to 0. So we have our denominators in the bottom, so we take that whole bottom part of the fraction, and we set it equal to 0. And then we're going to solve. Well, if it says 5 times x equals 0, I want to get x by itself. Opposite of times is divide, so we're going to divide both sides by 5. If you type in 0 divided by 5 into your calculator, you will get 0. Okay, so for your final answer, you're going to put x equals 0, but then you're going to put a line through it so that you know that x cannot equal 0. Okay, let's try another one. Find your denominator. X plus 2. X plus 2 equals 0. Let's go ahead and solve for x. It's x plus 2. The opposite of plus is minus, so we're going to subtract. Okay, this means that we have x equals -2. Okay. Oh, and before I do this, we're going to make it an excluded value by drawing that line through it. So x cannot equal -2. Okay. Let's try one more. Your denominator, 7x minus 3. 7x minus 3 equals 0. Let's solve. Now remember, we're working our way up on our PEMDAS scale. So first we need to get rid of this 3, so I'm going to add 3 over. We have 7x equals 3, and then I have 7 times x still, so I'm going to divide by 7. X will be 3 over 7, and we're going to keep that as a fraction just to help ourselves. Before I circle my final answer, let's make sure it's an excluded value by drawing that line through it. Okay, so now you have 3 rational functions that I want you to find the excluded values. So you're going to follow those same steps. Okay. For the next part, we need to review 12.1, or how do we sketch a graph and describe the transformation. So for this first one, remember, we need to talk about our vertical and our horizontal asymptotes. Okay. We did not write them out as our vertical and horizontal asymptotes, so we're going to break this down. Okay. For the first part we look at is down here. If I have x plus 1, that told me to go left or right. And since it's a plus, we are going to go left 1. This minus 1 tells me to go up or down. Since it's a minus, we're going to go down 1. Okay. And then we aren't going to worry about the squared right now. However, since it is not squared, we know that they're going to be split. So we're going to have one on top and one on the bottom. So when I draw this, I'm going to draw my lines. I need to go left 1 and down 1. My asymptotes follow those lines. Okay. My vertical asymptote is the one going up and down. So this is going to goes through the x, so it's x equals, and it was -1. Horizontal was the one going left and right. Okay. And since it went down 1, this is y equals, it was down 1, so it'll be -1. Okay. So this is coming from our equation, which is when we sketched it. And then our final step when we were sketching was to graph it. Remember, this was top right and bottom left. And we do those L shapes. Okay. For the second one, okay, we want to look at this x plus 3. Look at what's behind here. If there was nothing, remember that was plus 0. And this time, we have a squared, so that does change how our graph is shaped. So let's do our marks first. The x plus 3 is going to tell me to go left or right. Since it's a plus, we are going to go left 3. This plus 0 tells me to go up or down 0, so I'm not going to write that. And then that squared is going to tell me that they are both upwards. Okay, so let's go ahead and mark this. Left 3, 1, 2, 3. Draw your asymptotes. One's at -3, and the other one didn't move, so it's at 0. Okay, and then I can draw my graph. Remember, they're both on top because it was x squared. Now, when I write my vertical asymptotes, okay, the first one's my vertical, so it's this line. It went to the left 3 spots, so it's x equals -3. The horizontal asymptote did not move, so it was y equals 0. Okay, so that's our review. Okay, today we're going to take those asymptotes, and then we're just going to add the excluded value, which is what we did up here. So let's jump in. We're going to find the excluded value in the vertical and horizontal asymptotes. Okay. So the first thing we should look at is our excluded value. Or look at our asymptotes. So notice up above we had our vertical asymptote, which was x equals, and my horizontal was y. So I'm going to go ahead in my line, vertical, I'm going to put x equals, and horizontal, I'm going to put y equals. Now the really cool thing about this is that it goes with wherever the equation is. So if you know vertical is x, find the x. The x is right here. What does the -4 tell you to do? It tells you to go right 4. Okay, so when I write this down here, it's going to be +4. Okay. When I look at my horizontal asymptote, that's my y equals. So I have my y, which is a big number. So I look at my big number. That tells me to go up 1 or +1. Okay. Now we just have to do our excluded value. We're going to use our denominator for that. We have x minus 4, and we set that equal to 0. Let's go ahead and solve. X is going to equal 4, but remember, for an excluded value, we put that line through it, so we know that x will not equal 4. Okay. So when we are doing this, we do excluded value, vertical, horizontal. So we're going to do x does not, x does, and y does. Okay. Let's try another one. Excluded value, remember, x does not, x does, y does. Okay. Let's go ahead and find these. You can really start with whatever one. I am going to start with the horizontal again. So I'm going to, or the vertical asymptote. So I'm going to find the x. It says -1. I know that it's going to be the opposite of that. Okay. Or if I look at -1, I know that that's going to go right 1. So it's going to be x equals +1. Okay. The horizontal asymptote is y equals. So I'm going to find the y. And the y, that's going to be y equals 3. Oops. Because it goes up 1, or up 3. Lastly is our excluded value. Take whatever's in the denominator, set it equal to 0, and solve. Okay. X cannot equal 1. If you notice, your excluded value and your vertical asymptote are going to have the same values. Okay. The only difference here is that the excluded value will have that line through it. Let's try another one. Okay. So I'm going to fill in my excluded. X does not, x does, and y does. Okay, and make sure you're matching those up with whatever order they are in. So let's do my vertical asymptote. We're going to look down here. That goes left 1, so that's going to be -1. My horizontal asymptote, y, that's going to go down 1, so it'll be -1. And my excluded value, let's double check it. We know it should be -1, but we're going to double check it by setting it equal to 0 and solving. X equals -1. Make sure we put excludes, and then we're good to go. Let's try one more. Okay. Find your different parts. We have horizontal. My vertical is back here. Remember, if there's nothing there, that's like saying +0. Our excluded value, x does not, x does, and y does. Let's do our vertical first. If it's +3, that's going to move left 3. Which means -3. Horizontal asymptote is going to be up 0, or y equals 0. And my excluded value should be -3, but let's go ahead and double check. X plus 3 equals 0. Let's solve it. X equals -3. Throw that line through it, and we're good to go. They are the same. Okay. You have 4 student practice problems to try out. Make sure you're taking your time, okay, and comparing them. Go back to the chart that we made yesterday if needed.